Hi, and welcome to this next lesson in which we will be discussing subjects and verbs. Now, I might have lied to you just a teeny bit in that last lesson when I said that that was the foundational lesson and then we'd get right into correcting mistakes and correcting common problems. I'm going to have to modify that a little bit. I want to insert just one more lesson to lay a foundation that will be very useful, that will help you understand the various rules and problems we'll be discussing. And this issue is understanding subjects and verbs. And it's kind of simple, but it's also extremely important because a subject and verb, as we learned in the last lesson, makes a sentence. That's what you need to have an independent sentence. There's something called an independent clause. And so many of the rules in grammar refer to knowing whether something is an independent clause or a dependent clause. And I'll talk a little more about that later. But first, let's get started in this lesson of understanding subjects and verbs. The subject and verb, they form the core of the sentence. A verb indicates action, or in the case of linking verbs, it indicates a state of being. Not all verbs indicate action, as we discussed in the previous lesson. Sometimes it indicates a state of being. The subject is the noun or the pronoun doing the action or the thing that's in that state of being. So, whenever we have a sentence and we want to locate the subject and the verb, we just need to ask two questions. Okay, the first question is, what is the action or state of being in the sentence? And that is the verb. So once we've located the verb, we can ask the second question, and that is, who or what is doing the action or is in that state of being? And that is the subject. So we have a sentence is the thing doing the action, and then the thing doing the action. So let's look at an example here and apply those questions. The big dogs run around the quiet neighborhood without a leash. Okay, so let's ask our two questions about this sentence. First, what is the action in this sentence? So we have the big dogs run around. So right there we see the action. The action word is run. That's the verb. Okay, next question, who or what is running? The dogs are running. So that's the core of the sentence right there, the subject and the verb. The dogs run. All the other stuff about the quiet neighborhood and the leash, that's just additional information that's added to the sentence. Let's apply it to this one. That goat seems nice. What is the action or state of being in this sentence? Seems. This is that linking verb. Doesn't convey action. It indicates a state of being. Then who or what is seeming? The goat is seeming. So the goat seems nice. And by the way, let's just take a second to admire that goat. It's kind of extraordinary. I was able to find a picture of a goat that genuinely seems nice. I think he actually is nice. Anyway, moving on. Let's go look at multiple subjects and verbs. Sometimes you can have more than one subject and more than one verb in the sentence. Mary and Tom bought a new snake. So this has two people are doing the buying here, Mary and Tom. There are two subjects in that. Okay, Mary complained and cried as Tom shopped for the snake. In this case, we have a sentence with multiple verbs, and that is okay. Sometimes a verb can require multiple words to convey the verb, and these are called verb phrases. Let's look at some examples here. If we had these sentences, I am talking to the horse. I will talk to the horse. I should talk. I should be talking, I will be talking, I have been talking, I would have been talking. These are all verb phrases, and the whole phrase works together to convey the action of the sentence. Okay, so there's a couple points of confusion here when it comes to locating verbs. The first one is a gerund. A gerund is a noun, and it's what happens when a verb becomes a noun. So you take a verb like climb, to climb, I climb, you climb, that is a verb. But add ing, climbing, and it becomes a noun. So in this sentence, climbing is great exercise. So it might be tempting here to think that climbing is the verb, but in reality, is the verb. Climbing is the subject, it's the noun. So climbing is great exercise. Okay, infinitives. Rebellious people like to eat and swim all in the same hour. So what would be the verb here? It might be tempting to think that eat and swim are the verbs, but they're not. These are infinitives. Nothing is doing those verbs. They are in an unconjugated form. So let's look at the sentence more closely. And what is the actual action in this sentence? So the subject is people, but what are the people doing? Are they eating and swimming? No. They're liking. They like. People like to eat and swim. So people and like, that's the subject and verb in that sentence. Sometimes you can have an implied subject. That's where the actual subject is left out of the sentence because it's understood what it is. Come to the movies with me. And here it's implied, you come to the movies with me. So you is the subject. Watch out for that snake. So it's implied you watch out for that snake. Okay, why does this matter? Why did I make a whole lesson just on subject and verbs? When you have a subject and a verb, a complete thought, you have something that's called an independent clause. If you have a subject and verb, it's not a complete thought, it's called a dependent clause. A lot of rules refer to dependent and independent clauses. So let's look at some of these things. Finding fragments depends on the ability to spot when a subject and verb form an independent clause. When you're trying to correct run-on sentences, that depends on knowing whether or not you have two independent clauses in a sentence and whether or not they're joined correctly. So understanding a lot of the comma rules refer to independent and dependent clauses. And then just in general, writing clear and direct sentences as opposed to kind of awkward and confusing sentences, it's really important to know, what is my main verb here? What's my action of the sentence and who is doing that action? Okay, so that's just a quick review of subjects and verbs, how they form independent clauses, and we'll be referring to that concept as we go through the rest of the lessons. And now, as promised, we will dig in and start fixing common mistakes.